welcome. Raising Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you doing this week? How are you feeling? I hope you're handling the stress of the election season. All right, less than 2 weeks away now. It'd be nice to think it'll all be over in 2 weeks, but of course that's not going to be the case, right? Realistically, it could only get worse up through January 20th again. Hopefully not, but it's possible. And beyond all the other specific issues I have with Trump, and even using the word issues understates the depth of my contempt for him. But I'm just pissed he's going to again harsh the buzz for the whole holiday season, when it would be so easy to not do that, to do what every other candidate in history has done, which is to concede defeat and help the country move on. Of course, this implies he loses. I'm still hopeful that's the case, but he obviously could win. But assuming he loses, we just know he's going to drive an absolute frenzy of crazy and even potentially violence for as long as he can. I cannot find the words to describe the relief when that guy is finally in the rearview mirror. Anyway, plenty to talk about this week. Speaking of that guy, Trump's Nazi generals comment, the MAGA cult and what to do about cults in general, how to stop worrying so much, how to worry less as a parent, and a new show to enjoy. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things were pulling me down? The main lift this week is the new music project I mentioned last week. I'm going through the 4 CDs I released over the years and putting together an essentials collection of my favorite songs from the catalog. And it's just been really fun to revisit all that again, to put the songs in an order that serves them well. It's interesting to pull songs out of their original sequence and hear them next to different songs. It really helps them stand on their own in a new way. Also, there are 2 songs I wanted to edit a bit. One needed something added in the solo section. The other needed to be trimmed down in a couple of spots. And it's super fun to hear them improved after all these years. So this is obviously just for me. It's basically a hobby at this point, but it's still making me pretty happy working on it and knowing that other people will be able to hear the songs in the order I want them to hear now going forward. For my downs, this is kind of funny, but it's also the new music project. The minute I start doing something creative like this, yes, the fun is there, but also the driving myself crazy with all the choices and decisions. I mentioned wanting to add something to the chorus of one song. Well, something is pretty vague. What might that be? The universe of possibilities is huge. Is it the violin, a piano, an organ, a melodica, harmonica, something else from all the possible instruments out there? I finally settled on the piano. But then it took me 3 days and many different versions to settle on a part I liked. And by the way, this whole thing is probably 16 bars long, 25 seconds of music. And then, once you get the part, next up is the mix, how to get the sound to sit just right in the track. I'm still working on that. And it's been a similar process with the other song. So it can make you kind of crazy. It's good I'm not in a hurry. But the bigger point to me, really, is just to notice that this is so often the case with many things in our lives. They're both happy and difficult at the same time. Another small example, I think I mentioned this, is the heart monitor I'm wearing this month. On the one hand, we're getting great information that's good news and super good to have. On the other, it's been a pretty big pain in the ass, and I'm sure will continue to be for the next 2 weeks. But again, it's the same thing. Has it been good? Yes. Has it been a drag? Also yes, in some ways. It's pretty easy to let the downside of something take away from our sense of the good in it and leave us with a tone that's just sort of cynical and perennially disappointed. You know, like nothing is really that great. That's kind of sad, I think. The better approach is to turn that around and see the downside as adding to the up in the sense that it makes our whole life richer and more dynamic and more interesting. If it was all up, that sounds nice maybe, but also boring. All down is no thank you, but this constant mix of up and down is, well, it's life for one thing, but it's also pretty great. Anyway, just thought that was an interesting perspective, And that's ups and downs for this week. Next up, top stories. This week, the big news for me was Trump's comments about wishing his generals were like the Nazi generals, along with his saying many times things that praised Hitler in one way or another. You know, he did a lot of good things. First, as much as Trump disgusts me, I don't believe he's a Nazi. Yes, he hates groups of people. He is certainly driven by grievances. He clearly wants absolute power, but that still doesn't necessarily make him a genocidal murderer. I don't think that's what these comments suggest. What I do think they suggest is how dangerous he is to our constitutional system. When he says, why can't my generals be like Nazi generals? He doesn't mean, why can't they exterminate millions of people? At least not yet. Instead, he means, why can't they be loyal to me like they were to Hitler? Why can't they do what I want them to do rather than insisting on following the Constitution? Never mind, that's the actual oath they take, not to the president or any person or institution. They swear to serve and protect the Constitution, which is exactly how we want it to be. So why would someone want generals to be loyal to them rather than the Constitution? The only reason you need that is if you plan to do something unconstitutional, right? If you're committed to living within the rules, you don't need to be exempt from the rules. That's the danger all these comments praising dictators ultimately represents. Donald Trump literally believes he should be above the law. That's what his malignant narcissism tells him. He's acted that way all his life and mostly gotten away with it. It pisses him off that he wasn't and might not again be above the law as president. And the truth is, with the Supreme Court immunity ruling and the chance to pick different staffers the next time around, he might actually have that power in a second term. If that doesn't scare you, you just aren't thinking clearly about the beauty and power of our constitutional system, about the freedoms we enjoy because of it, and about America's role in the world. On the election watch, I heard a volunteer at our local Democratic office sharing a conversation she'd had with a Trump supporter. At one point, the volunteer said, "But what about his mocking people with disabilities?" trying to point out that Trump's character flaws, make him unfit for office. The reply she got was, "Oh, that's not real. That never happened. That's just all AI-generated fake news." That is super crazy, classic cult mindset. I don't believe what you're saying. I don't believe my own eyes and ears. I don't believe any form of evidence. I only believe what Trump says. There are a lot of people who are in that same space. At one level, you can't help but wonder how that happens, how it's possible, right? It just doesn't seem like it is possible. And it's really hard not to spend time thinking about it and being honestly sort of depressed by it, right? But it actually can be explained. There's a great piece I found from NPR on this. I'll link to it in the notes. But there's a lot of tribalism in it, which is really just the need to belong, which is deep-rooted in our psychology and evolutionary wiring. There's also a strong drive to be right about things and be part of a righteous cause of some kind. There's a deep satisfaction in that. And of course, these needs are triggered in ways they've never been before by the algorithms on social media platforms. Bottom line, it actually does make sense that people can get into this place. It's probably helpful to try to give them some grace in your own feelings towards them. They are dealing with a type of mental condition that can truly ruin their lives. Not just the Trump cult, but cults in general. On the other hand, there's probably nothing we can do about it directly. That's what I took from the article anyway. It's a real condition. It's a serious condition. And helping them break out of it is probably best left to professionals. So we should try to stop worrying about it because it's out of our control and just double down, focusing our energy on what we can control. All right, that's top stories. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last time, we talked about the Marshawn Lynch technique, where you look in the mirror and ask, what kind of person do I want to be today? And we gave it an election twist. What kind of campaign support person do I want to be? This week, I want to talk about a new piece of Inner Game Gold, or at least new to the podcast, which is worrying is suffering in advance. Worrying is suffering in advance. I'm a big worrier. Most people I know are worriers. It's a super common thing to do, but it is not helpful because it adds a real emotional load to our lives and for no good reason, no real benefit. So this saying, I don't remember where I heard it, but this can be a real help in breaking the worrying habit. First, it's clearly true. When we're worrying, we're suffering from something that hasn't actually happened yet and may never happen, right? But we're suffering from it anyway in advance. That doesn't seem like a smart thing to do. But a thought like this, a quote or a saying, can be a real help because you can use it as an argument when the worrying thoughts come up. You notice yourself worrying about something, you say, nope, that's suffering in advance, we don't want to do that, and that helps you shut it down. And the fact that it's true gives it extra power in being able to do that. Now, do you say it once and it stops forever? No, you may need to do it multiple times, especially if the worry is particularly strong, like, say, Trump winning the election. It also doesn't mean we shouldn't think about bad things that might happen and plan for what to do if they do. Just this week, I have a backup power and surge protector in my office for my computer and printer and all the electronics, etc. The battery needed replacing, so I ordered another one, and that's my plan for power spikes and power failures. I know it works. I don't have to worry about it anymore. When you think about things that might happen and do something to be prepared for them, that can be super smart and helpful. And it actually helps you worry less because once you have a plan in place, when the worry comes up, you can say, nope, we've got that, not going there. But worrying is different. Worrying is just repeatedly thinking about what might go wrong and how bad it would be and just carrying that load around. It's all cost, zero benefit. So that's Inner Game Gold this week. Worrying is suffering in advance. Add that idea, that thought, that saying to your mental game toolbox. See if it doesn't help you break out of the worrying cycle the next time it happens. All right, next up, raise your outer game. Speaking of worrying, this week I want to say a little about parenting. Parenting has got to be one of the biggest sources of worry. There are so many things to worry about with your kids, starting at the very beginning and continuing basically for their entire lives, or at least as long as we're still here to worry about them. We worry about them, we worry about our parenting, and if we're messing them up. I saw a funny headline from The Onion this week. Study finds every style of parenting produces disturbed, miserable adults. In the article itself, which of course is satire, it says, quote, despite great variance in parenting styles across populations, the end product is always the same, a profoundly flawed and joyless human being, end quote. That's funny, but that's the worry, right? We're messing them up, they're going to be miserable and make terrible life choices. That's the worry. So I don't have a ton to say here. The main thing is to point out that the Onion piece actually has it backwards and to give ourselves some grace as parents. None of us know what we're doing. We weren't given any parenting training or given an instruction manual when we brought them home from the hospital. I'm not sure that's such a good idea. But we're fine. We're doing the best we can. They're fine. They're going to be fine. And it's also going to be hard because life just is for everyone. So relax, take a breath, work on keeping your worrying in check, and enjoy the richness of parenting life. Now, this is about the normal range of parenting worries. Certainly there are things that can go far beyond that, and I don't want to diminish that in any way, of course. But in the normal parenting range, carrying the burdens of those worries, let's try to give ourselves a bit of a break and enjoy the ride as best we can. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, let's work on worrying less. So step one, take a minute, sit down, think about the statement, worrying is suffering in advance. What does that mean to you? How does that apply to your experience? How true does it seem to you? So just write down your thoughts about that. And then for the week, practice putting it into action. Make a note to yourself, a reminder to work on it as you go through your days. Pay attention to your thoughts. When you notice yourself worrying, just shut it down. Say, nope, suffering in advance, not going there. and see if that doesn't help you break that cycle. Another way to approach this kind of worrying in the moment is to sort of triage your response. Here's what I mean by that. You notice the worry. First, ask yourself, okay, is this a real concern? If the answer is no, go right to your suffering in advance reply and shut it down. If the answer is yes, next question, okay, it's real. Is there anything I can do about it? Can I prepare in some way? If the answer is no to that, again, go to suffering in advance, shut it down. If it's a yes to that, it's real and you can do something about it, then the question is, okay, what should we do? What's the first step? And you make a plan to do something about it. That's obviously a bit more involved, but that's a very helpful process. If it's clear that it's either not real or you can't do anything about it, it's easier to shut it down. And if there is something you can do, you get the benefits of doing that. And the whole process feels like you're getting control back rather than being mindlessly dragged around by your worries. So anyway, that's a good challenge for the week, a practical exercise in worrying less. Next up, highly recommended. Still reading The President's Lawyer by Lawrence Robbins. I would say like not love on that one at this point. It's clearly written in recent times, lots of references to Trump-ish people, Fox News-ish news channels, all with different names, of course. But it feels a little cute in that way. I'm still interested in the story, looking forward to seeing where it goes. We finished season 2 of Dark Winds on Netflix. Sort of torn. I still love the vibe of it, the Navajo culture. It feels very authentic to me with my limited experience in that area. And there's some truly beautiful moments. And we loved season 1. But this season was just too hard to follow. Every episode, Margaret and I would be stopping and saying, what's going on? Who is this? What are we talking about? And it never really got better all the way through to the final episode. My sense is that they were just trying to work in too many threads. They didn't have time to connect them all, so we were just all over the place trying to figure out what was going on. I will still look forward to another season if one's happening. Margaret's not so sure. She thought it seemed just like maybe not well done, right? Not sure she trusts the filmmakers next time. The bigger show on my mind this week is one I haven't started yet, which is The Penguin on Max, HBO Max. My son turned me on to this. He said it's amazing. He's been watching it, loving it. 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. The trailers look great. But the big thing is that the star is Colin Farrell, the great Irish actor, and you would literally have no idea it was him if you didn't hear about it elsewhere. When I first saw a print ad, there was a picture of the Penguin character, and the poster said, starring Colin Farrell, and I assumed he was playing someone else in the show, the police commissioner or something, because there was no way he was the Penguin himself, but he actually is, and I still can't get over it. The makeup is just remarkable. I watched a special feature on this part, the makeup. Typical story, 3 hours in the chair at the beginning of every day, which just sounds miserable. But the transformation just blows your mind. I looked, tried to see it, his eyes. I just can't find him anywhere in it. Peter said the same thing. He said, maybe his wife or his kids could see it, but I couldn't see it. It's really crazy. I'll link to the trailer. Check it out for yourself. But I'm very excited to check out the show. And that is highly recommended for this week. Reminder, for more ideas on how to get control of your thoughts and emotions, your worrying, and so on, check out the Raise Your Inner Game book or the Sports Academy training if you're an athlete, raiseyourinnergame.com for that. Otherwise, that's it for this week. Hope you have a great week. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you next time.